and good to have you in the WLS studios. John, Roy and I, by the way, to our listeners, all work together at Fox.
Fox 32 here in Chicago.
We have covered so many big stories. It's actually great to have you here, Roy, during a breaking news.
Well, this was a crazy week because I was sitting at home getting ready for this, and I'm watching Susan Collins make this historic speech on the Senate floor, and on my computer there, I'm watching the Jason Van Dyke verdict come in, and it's like two historic things happening at the same time. You have this struggle for what I think is a big deal about women's rights and what's happening to women, and then on the other hand, you have this issue of race. So it's two giant stories happening at the same time, and I think that's very historic in the fact that we're starting to cover issues of the real issues of importance, as opposed to a lot of nonsense. We're not doing celebrity stories right now. We're doing the things that are very important to America that really are going to decide the future of this country.
I could bring it up, though, that Batman has gone to rehab again. What was his name? Ben Affleck?
Ben Affleck.
Just to add that in on your point, Ron.
I'm sorry I missed that. I don't know why.
I find it interesting that when Judge Vincent Gahn, before they read the verdicts yesterday in the Van Dyke case, Judge Gahn praised the media and he praised the job that they did, which is interesting because I think a lot of media attorneys for the Tribune and others had to go to court to force him to open up certain files because he was so secretive as this process wove on for the last several months, Judge Gahn. So he praised the media. I think we did a great job here at WLS. I know the TV journalists did a fantastic job yesterday, but I know you want to give a shout out to a guy we had on a few moments ago, Brandon Smith, who sued to force the release of the shooting video, and also Jamie Calvin, who wrote the first story that McDonald had died from 16 shots.
First of all, I want to say this is a tragedy. It's a tragedy for all the families involved in this, and this issue needs to be dealt with in some way.
You mean the issue of police brutality?
The issue of police brutality, police training, the way these communities are being
treated. The blue wall of silence.
The whole thing. And I have a lot of friends that are police, and they will tell you that we're being thrown out there, and we're being asked to fix all of the problems of society, bad schools, no jobs, and all this stuff. And the cops all I talked to for this book, they told me three things. They care about their family and friends. They care about getting home safe at the end of a shift, and they care about getting that pension when they retire. And I think that there's so much distrust. There's such a divide that we've got to figure out how to solve that. And if anything comes of this great tragedy, that will be it. And these guys, I think, are heroes because they exposed this. I remember I was still doing this when the shooting took place, and I'm sure it was
working in TV news.
Working in TV. I'm sure it was a live shot. We covered it. It was a police shooting. It was tragic, and
I remember Pat Camden, the spokesman for the police department, or it was either the department or the union he was working for at the time, basically said, yeah, the kid was coming at him with a knife. It was a good shooting. We didn't hear anything about 16 shots, though.
And then 2 or 3 days, we probably moved on to something else.
Right.
And so here these guys go, because there are no longer the resources to do these stories the right way anymore. I mean, if you look at the falling circulation of the Tribune and the Sun-Times, those guys have been gutted. Same thing with all the TV stations. I don't think people know that a lot of the TV stations don't have the staff they used to have to do these investigative reports. So these guys, you can call them whatever you want, they are true journalists because they went out and they found a story, they stayed with it for so long, and they brought this to light. And that's what a journalist does.
Well, let's talk about true journalism, because I want to ask you to take on this, Roy. We had, the New York Times putting out a story about a deep throat coming out and saying our president is, behaving badly, but don't worry, we've got you covered. That came from, one person, the New York Times, put it out there right away. We've had other cases like that came up with, Ford going to the Washington Post and what was put out, with her. Is there, it used to be the three of us when we all started, you need 3 sources when you go out with this stuff. Have we, is this because we, as you just mentioned, that we don't have enough people in the newsroom, or is this sloppy reporting because I got to be first? What is going on here?
Please don't use the word sloppy reporting, because it's not sloppy reporting, it's sloppy editorials, it's sloppy commentary. And this is one of the things that I sign every book now, right? That says true journalists are not enemies of the people, they're the guardians of democracy. I talked to the guys at the New York Times, and you know what the guys at the New York Times said? They hate the guys at the New York Times editorial board because they work so hard to get the facts right on every single story.
The reporters do.
The reporters do, and they work, and every word is gone through. and they can
Good or
work
bad.
for 10 years, and all it takes is one editorial to say something crazy and do just what that editorial did, where they have this unknown source, write this editorial, and all of a sudden, the New York Times is a liberal, blah, 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 whatever. And the guys who are reporting every day, who are working, they're digging through documents, working till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to get a story. All of the hard work they do, they say, gets blown away by these editorial boards. And it happens the same thing with the guys at the Tribune and the Sun-Times. They're labeled with whatever the editorial guys write sometimes. And it drives them crazy. They go and they'll endorse somebody, and then 6 months later, that guy's in prison.
I was